When you look out over a lush, green British valley, you are looking at a meticulously authored manuscript, rewritten by human hands over 5 millennia. Not one square inch of this land is truly natural. Without the constant intrusion of human management, like grazing sheep and mechanical mowing, this picturesque scenery would not remain a park. It would undergo a rapid succession, reverting quickly to an impenetrable thicket of dense scrub and forest. The demolition of the original wilderness began around 3000 BC. Neolithic communities armed with stone tools began systematically clearing the woods to provide fuel and pasture, laying the foundational bones of the counties we see today. Take the Iron Age hill forts crowning our ridges. These massive earthworks are primary examples of human engineering, kept clear of forest through over 2,000 years of continuous activity, existing as open spaces only because we willed them to stay that way. What we perceive as natural beauty is an authored, artificial environment, one that is currently experiencing a significant collapse in biodiversity. The patchwork quilt of the English countryside is the result of over 5,000 parliamentary acts of enclosure. This legal revolution dismantled medieval open-field farming and fenced the land into the rigid, private rectangles we recognize today. The 20th century accelerated this transformation. During World War II, the Dig for Victory campaign sacrificed millions of acres of ancient heathlands and pastures that had never felt a plow, turning them over to wheat and potatoes. The post-war era prioritized industrial efficiency. Thousands of miles of hedgerows were ripped out to accommodate larger machinery, while chemical pest control decimated the biodiversity the soil once supported. In response to this rapid habitat loss, the 1950s saw the emergence of the nature reserve. It was a frantic emergency response, a strategy to draw a line on a map and guard the surviving fragments of wildlife. But this fortress model has a biological flaw. A legal boundary cannot stop climate change or pollution. By fencing nature into disconnected pockets, we trigger genetic isolation. Small populations become trapped behind these borders, unable to migrate, leading to inbreeding and vulnerability to disease. By isolating nature into static biological museum pieces, we inadvertently created extinction debts, biological promissory notes that will eventually become due as trapped species fade away. In environmental policy, scientists have retired the word conservation in favor of recovery. It is an admission that there is so little left to protect that we have to rebuild the system from scratch. The blueprint for this rebuild relies on the Lawton Principles. These are a set of ecological guidelines published in 2010 that outline how to move from fragmented habitats to a functional network by ensuring sites are more, bigger, better, and joined. The architecture relies on core areas. These high-quality engine rooms act as source populations. Next are corridors. These biological highways physically link core areas together. Finally, stepping stones and buffer zones act as service stations and protective blankets, shielding sites from pollution. Shifting our role from the guards of an isolated fortress to the engineers of a living infrastructure is required to restore biological functionality to the land. However, rebuilding nature's highways introduces the connectivity paradox. This is the strategic reality that physical links can backfire if they are not engineered with precision. First is the conduit effect. A connected corridor acts as an expressway for invasive species, allowing threats to move rapidly. Then there is the sink effect. If a poorly planned corridor leads migrating animals into high-risk environments, it becomes a biological dead end. For a beetle, a 2-lane road is an impassable wall. For a bird, it's irrelevant. Structural design must focus on functional connectivity, building for a specific animal's biological reality rather than just drawing lines on a map. To execute this massive rebuilding effort, we have to stop viewing nature as scenery. Healthy natural systems are now classified as critical national infrastructure, essential for providing clean water and maintaining soil health. Restored landscapes act as vital climate sponges. By returning upper valleys to their natural wetland state, the land can absorb intense rainfall, directly reducing the threat of flash flooding in populated town centers downstream. This theory has transitioned into a legally mandated reality through biodiversity net gain, or BNG. BNG is a statutory framework rolling out nationally by 2026 that requires developers to leave nature in a measurably better state than they found it. Under these rules, any new construction project must legally fund a 10% increase in local biodiversity, creating a private market that pays for the landscape's connectivity. Ecological recovery is no longer an anti-development philosophy. It is a mandatory framework required to strengthen economic stability and public safety. Implementing this infrastructure requires a cultural adjustment. There is friction between the traditional demand for tidy landscapes and the scruffy malady of a functional ecosystem. To bridge this gap, urban planners use a psychological design trick known as cues to care. By maintaining a crisp 1-meter mowned margin around an area of tall grass, planners frame the growth. This simple border signals that the unruly vegetation is a deliberate curation, rather than a sign of neglect. Ultimately, these regional recovery blueprints rely on the math of the micro-volunteer. The success of a landscape-scale network is driven by the aggregate power of small, consistent community actions. Because nature ignores property lines, your own backyard is part of the grid. A single native shrub in a planter, or a small hole cut in a residential fence, serves as a critical stepping stone in the national network. That messy, overgrown hedgerow is the active, engineered recovery of a living world.